So welcome everyone. Greetings to everyone who's connected from all over the world for our third edition of Journeying with the Laudato Si Action Platform webinar series. My name is Sarah Mundell, and I will be your moderator today. Just a second. I'll be your moderator today, and I'm on the team from the Vatican's Dicastery for Promoting Integral Human Development, working for the platform, and on behalf of everyone there, just want to thank you for joining us today. Please introduce yourself in the chat if you haven't yet, with your name, country, and include, if you are already registered on the platform, include which sector you're registered with, or if you're registering on behalf of your family, religious congregation, your educational institution, etc. So every month, the Journeying with the Laudato Si Action Platform webinar series brings you expert speakers on topics related to the 7 Laudato Si goals and representing the various sectors of the platform. We hope the series can support your journey as you reflect, assess, create, and revise your Laudato Si action plans and put them into motion. So a few practical announcements before we begin. This webinar is being translated in Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, and French. Anyone needing to follow in one of those languages, please click on the translation button at the bottom of your screen so you can follow in your language. Second, this webinar is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube today. Only our designated speakers will be visible publicly, also on the recording. We hope that you'll save this YouTube link to rewatch it or share with others after today's webinar. Third, if you have questions for our speakers anytime during the webinar, please write them in the Q&A section. I will collect those throughout and we'll try to include as many as we can in the Q&A. Finally, just a simple request that we hope can help build this sense of global community today. We ask that any comment you make in the chat be positive and respectful, seeking understanding instead of debating. So in just a few minutes, we'll have an opening prayer, followed by an introduction to today's topic, a greeting from the director of the Laudato Si Action Platform, John Mundell, and then we'll hear our main presentations from Michael Schuck and Alice Carwardine, followed by a short questions and answers session before we close with a final greeting and prayer. And now we'll share our opening reflection. It is a poem called I Happen to Be Standing by American poet Mary Oliver. I don't know where prayers go or what they do. Do cats pray while they sleep in the sun? Does the opossum pray as it crosses the street? The sunflowers, the old black oak growing older every year. I know I can walk through the world along the shore or under the trees with my mind filled with little importance, in full self-attendance, a condition I rarely can't call being alive. Is a prayer a gift or a petition, or does it matter? The sunflowers blaze, maybe that's their way. Maybe the cats are sound asleep, maybe not. While I was thinking this, I happened to be standing just outside my door with my notebook open, which is the way I begin every morning. Then a wren in the privet began to sing. He was positively drenched in enthusiasm. I don't know why, and yet why not? I wouldn't persuade you from whatever you believe or whatever you don't. That's your business. But I thought of the wren singing. What could this be if it isn't a prayer? So I just listened, my pen in the air. So with that reminder of the awe and simplicity of our connection with God, we'll begin the main section of our webinar. For those of you who are here for the first time, we have people who are connected, who are participants of the platform and friends of the Laudato Si Action Platform. For those who are here for the first time, the platform was inspired by Pope Francis's 2015 encyclical letter, Laudato Si, on care for our common home, which he addressed to the entire human family. Laudato Si means praise be to you in Umbrian, the Italian dialect spoken by St. Francis. It comes from his canticle of praise to God for his beautiful creation. In the letter, the Pope strongly ties the degradation of the environment with the suffering it causes, especially in fostering poverty, unemployment, pollution, and scarcity of essential natural resources like water. He invites us to follow in St. Francis's footsteps by remembering our shared bonds with everything in creation, which forms us into a kind of universal family. When we see our siblings suffer, we're willing to do anything to ease their pain. That is what Pope Francis's invitation is all about, to answer the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor, to ensure a healthy and livable future for our children. He writes in Laudato Si, "A deep sense of communion with the rest of nature cannot be real if our hearts lack tenderness, compassion, and concern for our fellow beings, human beings. And concern for the environment thus needs to be joined to a sincere love for our fellow human beings and an unwavering commitment to resolving the problems of society." The work done through the Laudato Si Action Platform is one way to open our hearts beyond our own daily lives, to see the rest of the world around us, and to ask ourselves in what way we might act in unwavering commitment to answer the problems of society. What can we do to feel the needs of the poor as our own? How might we respond to Pope Francis's request to seek creative and just solutions? The platform is a tool and it's a global community. It's a virtual space of reflection and assessment, and also of commitment and action. Those who enroll embark on a journey, whether we're just starting out or already further ahead. What's important is that we're all on this journey together. So as you'll see here on the slide, there are 7 sectors and 7 goals which participants of the platform work towards. The 7 sectors include individuals and families, parishes and dioceses, educational institutions, healthcare and healing, organizations and groups, the economic sector, and religious orders, provinces, and communities. Everyone in each of these sectors work toward the same 7 Laudato Si goals, which are response to the cry of the earth, response to the cry of the poor, ecological economics, adoption of sustainable lifestyles, ecological education, ecological spirituality, and community resilience and empowerment. All of the goals come together to also answer the cry of the future generations who are worried about having a safe and healthy planet, and they are desperately asking us to take bold action now. So now we'd like to invite Laudato Si Action Platform Director John Mundell to give us a quick greeting.
Good morning, everyone. Good day, good evening. I'm happy to be with you for our 3rd monthly webinar on the Laudato Si goals. We are here on the West Coast of the United States at Gonzaga University with Cardinal Michael Czerny, the prefect of the Vatican's dicastery for promoting integral human development, to meet with Gonzaga's Center for Climate, Society, and the Environment, and to speak to university officials and students about the role that universities have in caring for our common home. It's a great opportunity for us to learn about their ongoing efforts to become more sustainable and to positively impact their students and the surrounding community. Participation in the LSAP itself also continues to grow these last several months, and we are seeing an uptick on the submittal of Laudato Si reflections and plans that our participants are willing to share with the rest of the platform. This is a positive sign of progress. If you haven't yet signed up to be in contact with the LSAP, please consider joining us as part of your Lenten commitments. If you have signed up but haven't yet submitted a reflection or action plan, I want to encourage you to go ahead and take that next step in your journey. Every little action is an encouragement to others. And now on to this month's Laudato Si goal that we are highlighting, responding to the cry of the poor. As you know, in integral ecology, it's not just the Earth's cry that we are hearing. Millions of our brothers and sisters are crying out too. Moreover, those who have contributed least to causing this ecological and climate crisis in the first place are usually its early and disproportionate victims. Laudato Si is, in fact, more of a social encyclical than one on climate change. A reading of its pages reveals that the word climate is mentioned just 14 times in the text, while the poor is mentioned 59 times. According to Pope Francis, I have a slide up there. Today, however, we have to realize that a true ecological approach always becomes a social approach. It must integrate questions of justice and debates on the environment so as to hear both the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. In the environmental work I've done, I've personally witnessed the negative impacts that environmental degradation and climate change can have on poor communities and those most in need. Whether those impacts are seen in their contaminated drinking water or poor air quality, or in the flooding of their lands and homes, or the loss of their natural landscapes. Today's webinar highlights this issue and how our own ecological conversion is aided by our willingness to address it in our own choices. So now, let's introduce our two speakers.
Yes, thank you for centering us on today's topic and hearing how we can seek to be transformed during this season as the Christian community approaches Easter and everyone in our everyday lives. So first of all, our first speaker is Michael Schuck. He's a professor of Roman Catholic social thought in the Department of Theology and a professor of environmental justice in the School of Environmental Sustainability at Loyola University, Chicago. He holds a PhD in ethics and society from the University of Chicago, where he also received a master's degree in religious studies and political science. He's the founding director of the Joan and Bill Hanks Center for the Catholic Intellectual Heritage at Loyola University, and currently assists the Laudato Si Action platform with the global university engagement. His research focuses on Catholic social thought, Roman Catholic social thought, theological and philosophical ethics, environmental justice theory and movements, and Indigenous studies. Among his published works is an online textbook on integral ecology called Healing Earth. So welcome, Michael. We look forward to your presentation. If you can turn on there.
There we go. Yeah. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, everybody. It's really nice to be with you. I'm going to start my presentation with a demonstration. And to do that, I have to move my camera from my face down to my desktop. Now, I'm sure you can all see these Lego pieces. Probably one of the most popular toys in the world for children. I've got 5 pieces here, 6 pieces actually, 5, and I'm going to put 2 of these together like that. So now I've got 5. And I'm going to take this double one here and I'm going to put it right there. And then I'm going to, let's see, I'll take the green one and I'll put it here. And I'm going to have them parallel, but the equal distance to this flat piece. Now, what I want to do, I would like to create a bridge with this level flat piece as kind of the bridge platform. And what I want to do is ask you a question for some assistance. It's not a trick question. It's just really a very simple question. How do you recommend that I create a level platform for this bridge? From among the pieces that I have at my disposal. Now, what I'd like you to do is put your answer in the chat, or if you're not able to do that, just write it out on a piece of paper for yourself. And it's a very simple question, but I'm going to give you a few seconds to put your response in the chat. Okay, great. I'm going to let you know something that is almost always happens when I do this demonstration with my students, and it may be happening with us. I'm looking at the chat and it looks like it's kind of coming out the way it usually does with my students. But typically my students will advise me to take a brick and put it on top of, say, the green one here, and then I've got my flat platform. It's a very rare circumstance where a student will advise me to remove a brick to create a level platform. Now, it's a curiosity because really both answers are equally valid, but we'll generally always tend to answer the challenge by adding something rather than subtracting. And if you think about it, this is a curious kind of automatic response that we have to many things in our lives. When we meet challenges or problems, we think of how we can add to solve, and less likely do we think of how to subtract to solve. Now, Lent is a period of subtraction, encouraging us to think of how we can subtract unnecessary and overbearing things from our lives. In the ancient tradition of fasting, the ancient tradition of reducing ourselves down to kind of bare necessities. So I want to use this as just a kind of an opening demonstration to move on to my PowerPoint, which I will put on the screen right now. Okay, so here I am, and I do want to, as is typical for us at Loyola when we begin our presentations anywhere, on campus or out, is just to
excuse me, Michael, do you want to move your camera back up to your face, please?
Can you see me now?
Yes, great. Thank you.
Thanks. I just wanted to allow people to know that we at Loyola acknowledge our location on the ancestral homelands of the Ojibwe, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi people. And we try our best to recognize the tragic legacy of colonization and genocide that still impacts Native Americans in the United States today. And as a Jesuit university, we recognize our responsibility to understand, teach, and respect the past and present realities of Native Americans and their continued connection to our land. So back to the demonstration and what I wanted to spend some time with you on. So adding rather than subtracting is a tendency that most of us have when responding to a problem. And it's not bad. It's adding sometimes is the proper response, but it's just that we almost make it an exclusive perspective in our mind. In many circumstances, adding to solve a problem has lethal consequences for the earth and the poor. And adding is at the heart of consumerism. Now, we generally know what consumerism is, but maybe not think of it in terms of its cultural dynamic. Consumerism is a cultural model that promotes the acquisition of goods, and especially the purchase of goods, as a vehicle for personal satisfaction and economic stimulation. Since World War II, this model has created a pervasive cultural attitude of consumerism in the United States, especially, and elsewhere in the world. It means that even when we're promoting or trying to pursue our best intentions, sometimes we're thinking almost automatically of adding rather than subtracting, because it is a pervasive cultural attitude. And we know that behind excessive natural resource commodification and extraction lies personal, financial, and government-encouraged consumerism that intensifies the cry of the earth. We also know that consumerism intensifies the cry of the poor. And I want to just quote a few passages from Laudato Si where Pope Francis really makes this point. In Laudato Si 50, he says approximately a third of all food produced is discarded. And whenever food is thrown out, it's as if it were stolen from the table of the poor. In Laudato Si 142, Pope Francis notes that drug use in affluent societies creates a continual and growing demand for products imported from poorer regions, where behavior is corrupted, lives are destroyed, and the environment continues to deteriorate. In Laudato Si 51, Pope Francis says the warming caused by huge consumption on the part of some rich countries has repercussions on the poorest areas of the world. And of course, he says very on in Laudato Si that he wants to point to this intimate relationship between the poor and the fragility of the planet, and to remind us that our world has a grave debt towards the poor. Let's see, March 2nd, very recently, Father Josh, our great friend, Father Josh Caritha, posted a notice in the Laudato Si Action platform, and it was entitled Sustainable Lifestyles, an Invitation to Tread Lightly on the Earth. It's a beautiful reflection. In that reflection, he quotes from Laudato Si 2:22. We need to take up an ancient lesson found in different religious traditions and also in the Bible. It is the conviction that less is more. Or, as I might suggest, subtraction is addition. So I'd like to continue with Father Josh's thought by making 4 points of a practical nature related to our response to the cry of the poor. And I'll focus on a few things that anyone can do really, as well as actions that can be taken at universities, which is the community that I have my most interaction with. First of all, set subtraction goals and take subtraction actions that connect your care of the earth with care of the poor. There are many of subtraction goals and actions we can imagine. I just cite 3 here that kind of link to the quotes that I read from Laudato Si. Take less food by using a smaller plate. Something we did at Loyola University, which was very effective, was eliminating trays in campus dining halls. Students have to bring a plate, get their food. They don't put more food on the tray than they'll ever eat. This is something that maybe you haven't thought of. Support 12-step addiction recovery programs in your local and campus communities. This is something that I'm concerned about with my students, with friends, and others that suffer from addictions. Thirdly, this is very simple and you're well aware of it. Walk when driving is unnecessary. Carpool to campus. Here's that small plate. There's the AA, Alcoholics Anonymous symbol. And there's somebody walking to work. A second point, live out practical subtraction suggestions relevant to your journey towards integral ecology. So during these last 4 weeks of Lent, practice one small plate dinner each week over the next 4 weeks. Put it on your calendar. This one's more challenging. Maybe you haven't interacted with people that suffer from addictions and feel like you really would have nothing to contribute. But in fact, most recovery programs really accept and welcome support. Find a 12-step recovery program near you. Visit it. Ask how you can help. Commit to replacing one drive with a walk each week. I have to put it on a calendar. I have to put it in my notebook to just incentivize myself and remind myself of these rather simple things. Thirdly, each week over the next 4 weeks, ask God how you can respond to the cry of the poor through subtraction action. And pray this part of Pope Francis's prayer for the earth from Laudato Si 246. O God of the poor, help us to rescue the abandoned and forgotten of this earth, so precious in your eyes. Bring healing to our lives, that we may protect the world and not prey on it, that we may sow beauty, not pollution and destruction. Touch the hearts of those who look only for gain at the expense of the poor and the earth. And finally, to keep all this in mind, recall that you are practicing Lego spirituality. Thank you for this chance to spend a few moments with you.
Thank you, Michael. That's a great question, at least for those of us who are in areas maybe that are almost super developed, let's say, right? This concept of starting to become equitable, it means removing something instead of adding something else. It's a great way to kind of transform our logic. Just a quick question before we move on, because I think this question is good to answer right away as far as you can in your experience, but how would you address this paradox for developing countries, and how do you move forward economically without, let me get the question exactly here. I want to say it correctly. So how do developing countries become as strong as developed nations in wealth, defense, et cetera, without increasing their GDP and therefore necessarily increasing consumerism?
I'm sorry, that was kind of fast. Could you repeat it again?
Yes.
a little slowly?
Yes, and also remembering, we know you're not an economist, but you're in the theological side. How can developing countries, when we're talking about using less and going against consumerism, right? How can a developing country become stronger? Like, how do you kind of raise up to the level of the developed countries without increasing consumerism? Any thoughts on that?
Sure. I do an online course for the Jesuit Majas program, and we have students from all over the world that join in this course. And what typically happens with students from developing countries is they have so much to teach us, so much to make us aware of in terms of water deprivation, food shortages, catastrophic weather events. So I think what the developing world has to offer is its wisdom and its experience and knowledge to do everything possible to make us aware of that.
Great, thank you. And there will be time for more questions after our next speaker. So thank you, Michael. Now I would like to introduce our next speaker, Alice Carwardine from Australia. Let me get her photo up here. Alice is returning from last month after great reception of what she had shared with us. We wanted more. So she's a teacher from Brisbane, Australia, a Catholic earth care animator for Caritas Australia, and is founder and owner of Overturn the Tables, which is a business that offers faith formation workshops about Laudato Si. In 2018, her Lenten journey, inspired by Laudato Si, led her to become zero waste. And since then, she has strived to adopt a sustainable lifestyle. Alice has a master's in theology and works to help families, schools, and parishes to live out the messages in Laudato Si. So Alice, welcome you, and we're excited to hear what you have to share.
Thank you, Sarah. I just wanted to say Jingri from the Yugamba language speaking people's area. I'm on their land today, coming to you from their land here in Australia, and respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners past, present, and emerging. I'm just going to share with you my screen. Oh, Sarah, I think you need to unshare so that I can share. There we go. Thank you. Here we go. So for those, who I didn't have the pleasure of presenting to last time, as Sarah said, my journey with Laudato Si really began in Lent of 2018, when I decided to start the journey of becoming zero waste, inspired by the words of Pope Francis. And I suppose when I wanted to share with you all as to follow up with what I shared with you the first time, is some of the things that I learned in hindsight of the experience that I had during Lent. And some of this came from really the core of, to me, what Lent is about, and that is coming to an understanding of what we are doing that is sinful and trying to change that. And in some ways doing that, taking that lesser route and becoming, making sacrifices of certain things in our lives. And I think that speaks really well to what Michael was saying just before. So as part of my theological work, I was also inspired by Father Josh. So he's really getting a lot of airtime at the moment, but I love his theology. And there was an article he wrote the year after Laudato Si was published, where he spoke about 7 ecological virtues, which I think I mentioned very briefly at the end of our last session. So praise, gratitude, care, justice, work, sobriety, and humility. Those were the 7. As part of my theological work that I did in hindsight of my Lenten journey, I sort of sat down and said, okay, well, in my conversion, I come to understand there were certain things to me that I considered to be new forms of sin in relation to the environment. So disassociation from the earth and from other people, exploitation of the earth and of people, harming earth and people, inequality, specifically towards the poor, waste that contributes to the degradation of the environment, greed, and arrogance as well. Greed also being one of the cardinal sins. So that one fit in really nicely with that whole 7 idea. So what I'm going to share with you during this this part of the presentation is some of the actions that I do, not just from a zero waste perspective, but from how that has grown into be a much more integral ecology sort of perspective, and how they link to these things. So the first thing that I'm really passionate about is slow fashion. As many of you would know, the fashion industry is very wasteful. It contributes to the unfair working conditions of the poor in many circumstances. And to me, when I am making the conscious effort to engage with slow fashion, so like when I bought my wedding dress, for example, that was a secondhand wedding dress. That outfit that I have there, which is actually the same one I'm wearing right now by accident, is one that one was op-shopped at the beginning of this year. So when I do that, I'm consciously thinking about what am I purchasing here that is contributing to inequality, and what can I be doing differently? So can I borrow something from a friend if I need a specific outfit or a costume or something that I need to wear? The second one is, and I spoke a lot about this in the previous session, was how I refill certain things. So I'll take a container or a jar and I will refill it with what I need to, and then I only pay for the contents. And the reason why this is particularly good for both the environment and the poor is because when our items come in single-use plastic, we're encouraging the extraction of oil. We're making a conscious economic decision that is sending a message that we value that product and everything related to that product. So how it is created, what plastic it comes in, etc. And a lot of the time, the extraction of that oil and the emissions that come from that directly impact the poor as well. So every time that I refill something, I'm thinking about, how am I becoming less wasteful? And if I am throwing something away, I always am thinking about that waste and how I can reduce that waste. When I make something, so peanut butter, cosmetics, jam, cake, cookies, whatever it is, I often am thinking about the ingredients and where they come from. I'm purchasing them locally. I'm supporting local economies and decreasing the reliance that I have on large-scale supermarkets and their supply chains. And for me, I feel as though this practice of making things and getting my hands dirty, like physically touching the items that I eat and that I consume and that I use, makes me in a way less arrogant towards the planet, because I am consciously thinking, how do I connect with this item? I no longer sort of see myself as this human being who is above everything else. I am becoming more conscious of how I am interrelated with everything else on the planet. And that's a journey that I will always be on to try and reduce my arrogance and become more humble in my interaction with the planet. Number 4 is I have a zero waste kit. So it's just a bag that has an old plate and a bowl and things in there. And that goes with me to parties. When I do professional development, I take it with me as well. And when I'm using and reusing and reusing and reusing these items, I'm consciously reminding myself that I am saying no to single-use plastics, which contribute to pollution. So I'm trying to reduce the amount of exploitation that I am contributing to. And I'm also practicing gratitude for the items that I have. And I take care of those items and I wash them and then I reuse them again. I also do a thing called plogging, which many people would probably do without realizing it. But plogging is short for picking up litter while jogging. It sort of is an amalgamated word. I used to live very near a beach, and every single day when I walked near that beach, I would pick up rubbish at different times. And I'm just hoping you can read that on the side there. So when I'm picking up rubbish, I'm conscious of the fact that I'm helping to increase the overall health of the oceans and also the people who rely on those oceans, including me, like I rely on the oceans. And when I do this, I'm actually doing this as an act of praise. And I'm trying to reconnect with the ocean. I'm trying to reconnect with the planet and stop this dissociation that I have. Now, number 6, I'm sorry I don't have a photo for this, but it's a bit hard to take a photo of something that you don't have, and that's new things. So not buying new things, kind of what Michael was hinting towards before. Sacrificing the new thing, the new phone, the new car, whatever it is, to help turn away from greed and reduce that consumerism. So this is one of the things that moving away from consumerism asks us to sacrifice, is to sacrifice that new stuff. My husband and I, living up here in Queensland, Australia, it is very hard not to live with a car in Queensland specifically. Everything is very far apart. Even driving, it can sometimes take hours to get to the nearest town. So we've always had 2 cars, 1 car each. And recently, my husband, we purchased a second-hand electric car for him. So we chose, even in that instance, we chose not to buy new. So another example is our house, because there is so much land clearing that is occurring in Australia to allow for new houses, which in some ways is very important, and we need that. They're also clearing sacred ancient bushland, which is really devastating. So we chose a house that was older, that had been there for a long time. Maybe that was because we wanted to feel a little bit less guilty, but we also wanted to turn away from greed. We wanted to live a sober lifestyle. We didn't want the newest thing. That wasn't necessary for us. And the last thing that we do, and I'm going to call out a little bit some of the wording that the dicastery uses in relation to this. One of the things that I would really, really encourage you to do, and this is not a zero waste practice at all, but go and join a local land care or an ocean care or a bush care or a swamp care group. This is something that I do on my weekend, 1 weekend a month, and help to regenerate the earth. In the 7 goals, we talk about the adoption of sustainable lifestyles. And there's a scientist by the name of Daniel Wall, and he talks about how, as you can see on this diagram, we need to move up towards this green section to regeneration. That's where we need to be moving now. Sustainability is something of the past. It's a language that we use, and Damon Gameau, who's an Australian filmmaker, he made a film called 2040 and a film called Regenerating Australia. He also talks about how sustainability is something that it's a past thing. We need to move towards regeneration, especially here in Australia, where we suffer so much from natural disasters, but also we are clearing land. Our farming practices need to move towards regenerative farming practices as well. There's a lot of things that need to happen there. So joining a local land care or an ocean care or a bush care group can help in that. And that helps us to care for creation and to turn away from harmful things that we are doing, because we're more conscious of the land. Like, I certainly would consider it a really, really bad thing if I was to accidentally litter, because to me, that harm is one of the worst things that I could do to the environment. So that's kind of the 7 virtues and sins, and 7 ways that you can live out those virtues and sins. And I encourage you to do that during the season of Lent. But to help you along to do that, I really like Michael's suggestion about having a calendar and setting aside specific time to be able to do certain things. But you can also use what's called the habit ABC. And this was introduced to me by a friend, and I found it very, very helpful. You need to have some sort of anchor moment to remind you to do a certain thing. So, for example, if you are wanting to have that zero waste kit and take that with you to parties, have it somewhere where you are going to remember to bring it. So I have mine in a drawer with my bag, so that when I go somewhere and I think, oh, do I need this? I can easily pick it up, and I can do that behavior of taking it with me. Once I've taken it with me, I can celebrate the fact that I was using it as I am enjoying my meal at wherever I am going. And over time, these small behaviors that we slowly change end up changing our overall culture. And that question before about, developing countries and all that sort of stuff, our culture of the more developed countries is in dramatic need of changing. And that's only going to happen through these small changes in behavior. So I think I'll leave it there for the presentation. I hope that that was also as helpful as what the first one was. And I look forward to the questions, and thank you so much for having me again.
Thank you. And if you want to stay on again, there's another question that's various people asked if you can repeat those 7 virtues, and also if we can share that afterwards with everybody.
Can do, yeah.
Let's see. I'll just pull those up for a second. Lots of good feedback. Some ideas that are coming through of things we can include in future presentations. So thank you everybody for this very active chat going on. And I see conversations happening there, which is part of the reason why we're doing this, to bring us together. Or even if it's easier to list them again, and then we could share it.
Yeah, I have a PDF that I can send, or I can put from my website. It is on there. I can put that in the chat if that is helpful for people. The link, you just need to scroll down a little bit towards the end. So I will put that.
Great.
That link is, oh, no, sorry. That was a direct message. I don't even know who that was to. There we go. Let's try that again.
There we go.
There we go.
overturnthetables.net/prayers. Okay, great. So if anyone has any final questions as we head towards our Q&A session, we do want to give a little shout out and reminder to sign up for the Laudato Si Action Platform if you haven't had a chance to do that yet at www.laudatosiactionplatform.org. You'll find resources and community and opportunities for reflection assessing yourself and making commitments and goals. So again, Laudato Si actionplatform.org. And let's see.
Can I add something, Sarah?
Yes, please.
I just have to do a little minor shout out to our School of Environmental Sustainability. To remind folks that sustainability has a scientific pedigree, about working in terms of ecosystem balance, which is so important, and homeostasis, the balance between change and stasis in an ecosystem. So sustainability may be a word that has bad connotations, but it's an important word in the scientific community.
Thank you. Yes, and it's always good also to not assume that we have the same thoughts about the words that we're using, and continue to ask each other, what does this mean to you? Because we come from so many different contexts. One question here that I liked, how do we put together subtraction and also having enough work for people? So if we reduce our production, how do we ensure that there's still jobs for everybody? If you have any ideas about that. Either of you.
I think so if I was to take the example of something that like shoes, okay, like if you take the example of shoes, if you think back 50, 60, 70 years, it would have taken one person to create a shoe, a really good quality shoe too, probably much better quality than some of the shoes that we purchase now. It would have taken them a day, maybe more than a day, to create one pair of shoes, right? And yet now we have these huge, factories where these things are just pumped out en masse using materials that are sometimes better, sometimes worse, sometimes very not good for the environment, all of that sort of thing. And, if we think about, well, maybe if we sacrifice that economic model of thinking, mass production, all that sort of stuff, and go back to, quality and all those sorts of things, we would be training people to be boot makers. We'd be training people to be able to care for these things. Like one of the there's a company here in Australia that makes boots called RM Williams, and they're quite famous in Australia. I don't know if they're around the world, but they're famous in Australia. And we decided to buy my husband a pair of these boots. And these are like $700 pair of boots in Australian dollars. Like, they are very expensive, but they are made of leather from Australia. And when we were given them, they said, this is how you care for this boot. There's a whole lot of work that goes into caring for this very expensive pair of boots, so that my husband can have them for a long time. So we followed that, and that takes us time, and that is a bit of a sacrifice, but he is hopefully going to have that same pair of shoes for a very long time. So, and we also know we can take those boots back to the manufacturer when they get to, when it's not as good, like the soles have gone or something, and they can replace and they can mend these items. So there's other people who are trained to be able to do these things. So sometimes when we're thinking of these, the economic model that we're currently in, it does have some benefits, but there's a lot of people that are doing research and hypothesizing about what it would look like if we were in a circular economy. So that's something that there's, like, I'm really not an expert in economy at all, but the idea of a circular economy has a lot of benefits if we can move towards that. So just to answer that.
Thank you. And that kind of ties into our what is going to have to be our last question for today. But Michael, what do you see? Someone's asking about the role of universities in developing the conversation around circular economy and inviting businesses and coming together to talk about regeneration and prepare the next generation of future leaders.
Well, there's a big transition going on in business school education, and it's not easy. The Jesuits have an organization within the International Association of Jesuit Universities focused on getting business schools to get more proactive on teaching green economy, circular economy. But this runs counter to the basic premise of a capitalist economy. So this isn't a parlor game. This is serious business, and it's a hard transition. But it has to happen. We know that.
Thank you. And I think with so many people on this call today, it's also encouraging that there are a lot of people out there working hard and giving their blood and sweat to bring this transition forward. So
yes,
we would love to be able to ask you more questions, but we'll have to close for now. And thank you so much for joining us. I want to, just thank all of our participants today, who we have people here connected from all over the world. It's great to come together as a community, and it's inspiring to reflect on how integral ecology helps all of us deepen our spiritual lives and to go without, to remember what really matters in whatever context we're coming from, even if that might look different, and depending on which country we're from. And also a big thank you to those who are working behind the scenes today to make our webinar possible. The team providing the technical support in the live stream, and our translators who've translated this into 4 other languages. We give you a virtual round of applause. So thank you very much. And again, for those who have not signed up yet to the platform, just going to show that website. If you would like to take this opportunity, you can sign up to the platform, or also subscribe to the newsletter that we put out that shares events and other news. And then finally, we would like to close with a prayer. So I'm going to invite John Mundell back on screen to share our closing prayer with everybody. Oh, sorry, one last announcement. So our next time that we can see each other is on April 6th. And this has the wrong date on it. So it's April 6th, Thursday, April 6th. It's the first Thursday of the month. And we'll be talking about how we're called to community and addressing the response to the cry of the earth. So we hope to see you there, and tell everyone about it, and share the link of today's YouTube also. So now we can go to our prayer.
Thanks. Our closing prayer is from Father Josh. We're giving Father Josh a lot of airtime, as we said today, but he's given us a wonderful prayer you can find in the annual report of the Laudato Si Action Platform, the second to the last page. So if you want to know where this prayer comes from. So please just join me in saying this prayer aloud together with me. God, our loving Father, you so love the world. As we journey together in pilgrimage on this holy land, may we perceive the infinite facets of your love, beauty, and glory reflected in the whole of creation, in all that live and breathe, in flowers, forests, seas, and stars, and in the faces of young and old. May we stand in awe and adoration before the grandeur and delicate equilibrium of the community of creation. Christ, our brother, you pitched your tent among us, and you shared the fatigue and toil of our labors. Have mercy on us for having abused the gifts of creation, for the times we have sown destruction, hatred, and violence, and brought death to our fellow humans and our fellow creatures. Make us keepers of the seamless web of life, of this planetary garden, and of one another. Holy Spirit, Ruah, the breath of life, you fill the world and hold everything together. Grant us the wisdom to recognize our interconnectedness and interdependence. And may we grow in solidarity with all creatures, especially the most vulnerable of our sisters and brothers. Inflame us with renewed zeal to care for our imperiled planetary home, and send us out as your apostles to the peripheries of the world, to announce the gospel of creation to every creature. Inspire and sustain our actions to build our common home and our communities. Amen. Let it be as we say with Mary, the Mother of Creation. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
So thank you again, everyone, and also thanks to all who are here, maybe from other traditions outside the, not part of the Christian tradition, but who also join us in working together for our common home and living our deepest values to do that. We hope to see you next time, and have a great rest of your day wherever you are.
Rest of the speakers, if you could show yourselves, great, thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Let's see. I think it's the 4 of us today.